Chief Atleo, what do you make of the situation in Anawapiskat a couple of days ago where a reporter, peacefully going about her business, was escorted off that reserve by band police acting on the orders of the chief? You think that's appropriate?
Is it appropriate that First Nations rank around 67th on the UN Human Development Index when Canada ranks in the top 7? Is it appropriate that when Amnesty International released a report that said that there's a grave human rights crisis amongst First Nations in Canada, is that appropriate? In 2011, when Sheila Fraser said that after 10 years of audits and over 30 audits specifically on Indian and Northern affairs, that conditions were getting worse, is that appropriate? Around the date when that report was released in December, I attended with a family who we went to the morgue to identify the body of their 16-year-old daughter, who was not just a life from a single family. This is now not only over 600 in a formal sense, but those that provide leadership and support for the murdered and missing Indigenous women of this country suggest that the number is over 2,000. The question is that appropriate? This is what our people are saying, that poverty is killing our people, that the history of colonization and unilateral action on the part of governments will stop now. We said we would be at a tipping point with the growth of our population exploding over half under the age of 25. That tipping point is now. We have arrived at the fork in the road.
Décembre 2012. La chef Spence entreprend une grève de la faim. Elle s'installe dans un tipi sur l'île Victoria, en face de la colline du Parlement à Ottawa. Dans l'espoir d'améliorer les relations entre les Premières Nations et le gouvernement canadien, elle réclame une rencontre spéciale avec le premier ministre Stephen Harper, le gouverneur général David Johnston et tous les chefs des Premières Nations du Canada.
We came here to come and see how Teresa is, how she's doing, and it's mixed emotion feelings about what she's doing. Part of me is really sad because in this country in the year 2012, almost 2013, our people still have to do drastic measures just to be acknowledged that we're the original people of this land, Turtle Island. And anything that has been done regarding the land, the water, the future of the unborn has always been the women. Any occupation or anything that has happened, it's always been the women that have stood up and said that we're tired of this.
I think I really would like to see our human rights honored, our treaties honored. I'd like, our people to have adequate housing. There's got to be a place for us in society to recognize the harm that's been done to us with the Indian Act and all those other things, and that's displaced us as a people from the rest of society.
La chef Spence insiste sur la présence du gouverneur général, puisque c'est le gouverneur général, Sir Albert Henry George Grey, 4e comte Grey, qui, en qualité de représentant du roi, était responsable des négociations originales du traité numéro 9 en 1905.
I've been asked to make an announcement here that Chief Spence will be coming out soon to address the media. I ask you to give her space, give her room. Please don't rush. This woman has been fasting for 31 days today, and she needs her space, so please give her room.
This meeting is supposed to be with the Governor General and the Prime Minister. It's important for both of them to be there at the same time, with the leaders, with all leaders, not just a few leaders. And we're given this opportunity for them to resolve the broken promises from the treaty. And then all we're asking is a meeting and to sit down with them. We're not, it's not a new thing that's been happening. Infrastructure for our communities and housing and education and health and justice and revenue sharing. Like
where did the money go, Thief Teresa?
We share the land.
No questions.
We share the land. We share the land all these years, and we never got anything from it. And
we will not take any questions, please.
All the benefits is going to Canadian citizens, except for us. Your ancestors came to our land. We even saved them. It seems like they're forgetting about the treaty, or they don't understand it. The treaty was not about control. It's about sharing, honoring, and respecting each other. And we've been doing that for so many years. We never change our lives. Why should you guys change our lives? We had our ways. Thank you.
Traité de la baie James, numéro 9. Article d'un traité fait et passé aux dates ci indiquées dans l'année du Seigneur 1905 entre Sa Majesté le Roi de la Grande-Bretagne et d'Irlande par l'entremise de ses commissaires Duncan Campbell Scott d'Ottawa, Ontario, et Samuel Stewart d'Ottawa, Ontario, et Daniel George McMartin de Perth, Ontario, représentant la province d'Ontario d'une part, et les Ojibwés, les cris et les autres Indiens habitant dans le territoire ci-après décrit, par l'entremise de leurs chefs et conseillers nommés plus loin, de l'autre part. Attendu que les Indiens qui habitent la région ci-après désignée ont été appelés à rencontrer une commission du gouvernement de Sa Majesté.
What our people understood, that it was a peace and friendship agreement, that it was a treaty of sharing, that it was a treaty of peace and prosperity, which is something that we so desired at the time because we were poor. We were poor people. And when we saw the opportunity of the government coming to us to make a treaty, we saw it as an opportunity that things would get better, things would improve, things would begin to prosper for the Cris.
Le Dr John Long, professeur à l'Université Nipissing, s'est rendu à Moose Factory en 1972. Il a travaillé à Moose Factory, à Saskatchewan et à Fort Albany comme enseignant et par la suite comme directeur. Il a écrit un livre qu'il a intitulé Treaty No. 9, lequel documente la teneur historique écrite et orale du traité.
My grandfather was there as a young lad with the signing of the treaty. Yeah.
Excellent.
As a young lad, yeah.
What do you want to know about Treaty No. 9?
Is it being fulfilled?
Excellent question. All depends which treaty we're talking about. There's more than one version of it. Because in one sense, it is something that is signed, it's a document. The other way to look at it is that it's an oral agreement, naskumituin. So for the people who were there that day, like grandparents and great-grandparents of people who we may be talking to today, their ancestors may not have been there actually signing the document. They may just have been witnessing an event because it was signed in private meetings. Ontario influenced some of the... I had this very naive understanding that everyone thinks the same way and everyone is honorable. So if I want you to sign something, I will explain what it is, you can read it, you understand it, and if you agree, you sign your name. And then I started thinking more and more about the treaties and realizing people have a way of life and they understand things based on their prior experiences. Well, what were people's prior experiences with non-Aboriginal people? What experience did people have with signing a document? So the other thing that happened was when the Hudson's Bay Company gave up its charter in 1870, which it had had for 200 years, one of the terms of that Rupert's Land Transfer was that Canada would protect the Indian tribes. Canada actually made the promise that when we acquire this land for Canada, we will protect the Indian tribes. And so on the one hand, the motivation for a treaty is Canada wants this land. And the other side of it is First Nations were expecting some kind of protection and some kind of assistance. In the case of Treaty No. 9, my argument would be that people just thought of it as assistance and protection. And the surrender was never mentioned at all.
En décembre 2012, le gouvernement canadien adopte le projet de loi Omnibus C-45, comportant de nombreux amendements à plusieurs lois, notamment la loi sur les Indiens, la loi sur le règlement des revendications des autochtones de la baie James et du nord du Québec, la loi sur la prévention de la pollution des eaux arctiques et bien d'autres. Le tout sans aucune consultation ou consentement des peuples autochtones.
The unilateral imposition of legislation that affects inherent treaty rights it's not on anymore. That cannot happen. And through Bill C-38, C-45, that affects the land and the water. That cannot happen. So it's the best interest of everybody to protect Mother Earth and stand up for the protection of waters.
C'est ce qui a déclenché la naissance du mouvement Idle No More, Jamais plus l'inaction, créé par 4 femmes de la Saskatchewan qui remettent en question le projet de la loi C-45 du fédéral.
But we see our white brothers and sisters as well. We see the Métis people, our brothers and sisters are here. We see the Inuit people and our brothers and sisters are here. All of our 58 nations from across Canada are here. Our youth, our men, the women, the elders. This is a movement because now it is a time for change, transformational change. Our treaties were meant to be peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. We shared this territory. We did not surrender the land and resources. We're sharing.
Part of the treaty understanding is a nation-to-nation relationship. And that relationship means that we are involved as grassroots people. This is the reason why you are here today, to tell the Conservatives they do not have your consent. They do not have consent. And I hope that our understanding of the treaty relationship will be fully recognized and implemented in a way that it should have been. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Spence wants the Canadian public to understand that she's not fighting with them. She wants you to stand with her too. And she wants her to work together. Let's share things. Let's not have one party be over another. Let's work together to show so that we're all sharing in the wealth of this land. Idle no more! Idle no more! Idle no more!
I want to recall and remember all the other leaders that have come since I first came here 41 years ago. And when I look out here now, I remember that 41 years ago, we never had crowds like this. We had the same arguments. Our lands were being taken away from us. Our environment was being destroyed. Our way of life was being threatened. The health and safety of our peoples were all at risk.
You know, in some ways, it's no different than when I came here in 1971. We still have governments that deny us, that won't let us get into their doors. They don't want to meet with us, don't want to talk to us. They're blind to the problems. But it's so different in so many ways. Because in 1971, they could get away with it. And now, in 2012, they can't.
There we have all our Algonquin women here. Look at how beautiful they are. Look at. And it blesses my heart when I see our women that we are here and we stand strong. We've always been told that we, the women, are the backbones of our communities. And we have one strong woman that is the backbone of our nation, and she has given her life for all of us, and that is Chief Teresa Spence. So please remember her in prayer and her family. Please. We have to close this, but the circle has not stopped. It will continue and continue and continue, and make sure that it does.
attendu que les dits commissaires sont entrés en négociation avec les Indiens de la région ci-après décrite et qu'ils ont conclu un traité par lequel ces derniers cèdent et abandonnent à perpétuité au gouvernement du Canada, pour Sa Majesté le Roi et ses successeurs, tous leurs droits, titres et privilèges quelconques relatifs aux terres. Sa Majesté et ses successeurs avoir et posséder les dits droits, titres et privilèges à toujours.
There's two versions of the treaty. When you talk to government officials, they'll talk about the written version, which is basically a ceding or giving up or taking up of the land by the government, because
and resources.
Yeah, and resources and opening up the land basically, because back in 1905 and 1906 when the Treaty 9 was signed, prior to that, Ontario and the federal government came to an agreement that one of the sole purposes of wanting to enter into a treaty with the Cris of northeastern Ontario was that they wanted the land, they wanted the resources. They could see that in the future there would be the De Beers mines, there'd be all kinds of developments, forestry happening in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And they said, let's make a treaty with the Cris, because we want to get our foot in the door. We want to get ourselves there. We want to be able to have access to those lands.
Le grand chef Dr. Stan Ludit de la nation Mushkegowuk veille à ce que tous comprennent bien la signification du traité numéro 9. Il a consacré ses dernières années à voyager et à organiser des conférences sur ce sujet.
Our history is here in Moose Factory, where the treaty was signed back in 1905. These are very, very historic documents that we have here. And having the treaty document with us to be able to honor and respect what our forefathers did in terms of the treaty in regard to their vision and their dream and their aspirations for the future, I think it's very, very special. When we look at this treaty, we think of our elders that have gone before us who spoke about the treaty and how important it was for them and how they understood it. It's a special moment for me as well, as a grandson of a signator to the treaty, that my own grandfather, my own blood, Andrew Wesley, that's really something, and that's the original, put his mark, very original, signifying his agreement to what he had heard from the commissioners. They did all of this for us. That's amazing. Just brings you to tears, eh?
Yeah. Wow. Peter Sackney.
Yeah.
Andrew Wesley.
Joey, John, Henry,
my mother's grandpa. So when you think about it, I'm the fourth generation. Yep.
The treaty is something historic, but I believe in my heart that it's as relevant today as it was then, because the understandings that were reached by my grandfather, Andrew Wesley, and some of your grandfathers and great-grandparents that were involved in the treaty understood certain things. They understood that they didn't give up anything, that it's a sharing agreement, that it's something that we understand to be as important today in terms of our lands, our resources, our territories, sharing in the wealth of the land. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Because a lot of times our communities are in poverty, and the treaty should be a vehicle that should be able to get us out of that poverty. But we're way behind, I think. We got to get caught up. We got to get caught up and begin that process of bringing governments to the table, and we're trying to do that. But before we do that, we need to have a conversation amongst ourselves.
I have never seen the government sit across the table from me to negotiate anything about a treaty. They don't want to talk about a treaty. We, as nations, have to implement our treaty on our own. Are we going to sit and wait another 107 years for the federal government to honor this treaty? I, as chief, will not sit by and continue just taking program funding going forward. We need to be able to develop resources within our territory. We need to be able to do that, but never to compromise on the environment and negative impacts that may happen.
There's been a lot of case law, a lot of court decisions since the 70s that have made it really clear that Ontario's right to take up land, the Crown's right to take up land in general, is subject to a consideration of the effect of that taking up will have on its treaty partners. And the duty to consult and accommodate is real and creates significant obligations on the part of the Crown. But at the core of it, we have a different view, a very fundamentally different view in terms of how to approach a very core issue has to do with the use of land. I recognize that different view will create litigation, will create tension, will create frustration, but our futures are intertwined, and the essence of being treaty partners is as much focusing on what the past meant and what the treaty meant, as much that is also trying to identify what our future looks like together and how we're going to work together.
What does treaty mean to you? Because it meant something to us in our generation. That's how my dad explained it to us in the family. And when the treaty came around, it meant something. It wasn't about trying to get rich, meaning money, economics. This is about stories, about morality. It's like my dad said, you know, Westgate, the stories were passed on. So when you do tell a story, and it's always believed that way, that you give it your life to, like our grandfathers did before us. Because if you don't speak and give it life, the story stops. This is our history. We have to believe it. We can't be reading it in the books, in the newspaper. That's not our history. Our history is oral, where we have to go back into our hearts.
Aujourd'hui, certains chefs des Premières Nations sont invités à rencontrer le premier ministre Stephen Harper. Le gouverneur général n'assistera pas à cette rencontre, et ce, malgré la demande de la chef Spence. C'est une journée très difficile. La présence des chefs des Premières Nations à cette rencontre ne fait pas l'unanimité. Mais au moins, il n'y a pas de violence et la police et les gens maintiennent de bonnes relations.
The police departments are changing, like they're working with us. They're softening towards First Nations people. I mean, picture yourself at a demonstration, First Nations people up on the hill, even 2-3 years ago. Do you not remember the guns that were all of the snipers on the roof? And they looking like with guns aimed down that could strafe, if they needed to, the crowd. Did you see any today?
No.
I didn't see any on the 21st either. They're realizing that it's not a threat to have a bunch of Indians together. We're changing the way we deal with each other.
What we're doing here is for our people and for the young people of the future. And this is their future we're talking about. And we're not going to give up on that future for them. So we're going to stand strong, and I hope that the people there would stand strong for their futures.
On behalf of Kitagazibi, the Anishinaabe Nation, we welcome you here. What we're doing here is powerful. We have said that the small fires all across the land have come together, and there is now a mighty fire that will not be extinguished.
This building behind me, I'm ashamed to look at it. But I'm proud to stand beside Chief Teresa Spence's daughters.
I cry for them because for what their mother's doing today for the people. I cry for those women who suffer out there. I cry for those young people who are suffering too.
I will not fight for this reason. As Chief Spence says, to be kind with each other, to share with each other, to walk beside each other, to love each other.
We are losing our battles at home, our traditions. My children live off the land. We live off our animals. We only take what we need. We do not take what more than we don't need, because that's the way we were taught. And I choose to live on my reserve because that's where my ancestors came from. And my children will continue to live on our land. As us Anishinaabe people, we are also the keepers of our animals, because the animals also keep us, give us strength and courage. There's 20,000, 30,000 people up north at home that are isolated. What's going to happen to them on this Bill C-45? You're so selfish, Mr. Prime Minister. That's our land. You're mistaken, Mr. Prime Minister. Us Northern Reserve people are humble people. And like I said last night, if I have to wake up every Anishinaabe in the Northwestern Ontario, I will.
Sa Majesté convient que les 10 Indiens conservent leurs droits de chasse et de pêche dans toute l'étendue du territoire cédé, sujet toutefois au règlement que le gouvernement pourra juger à propos de faire avec l'autorisation de Sa Majesté, à l'exception cependant des portions de terre qui pourraient être employées pour la colonisation, l'industrie minière et forestière, le commerce, etc.
In the written version of the treaty, these words are so important, or this concept was so important, that the treaty says it 4 ways. Cede, release, surrender, and yield up forever all your rights and titles. It also says the right to pursue their usual vocations of hunting, trapping, and fishing throughout the tract surrendered, subject to such regulations and accepting such tracts as may be required or taken up.
So what does that mean then in the case of Treaty 9 if it says subject to such regulations in there?
Well, according to the written version, what it means is that the government of Canada can make regulations. Someone might argue that this would mean that the government could say there will be no hunting in the spring because this treaty says subject to regulation. It's not very likely that people would say, oh, you're right. And this is why we have to understand the big difference between what the treaty says and the way it was explained to people. So, before people signed their names to the agreement, it says signed at Moose Factory or signed at Fort Albany or Mishkegogama or Osnaburg after having been first interpreted and explained. So when people signed their name, they were signing their name, I argue, because of what was said. So the question then becomes, how was it interpreted and how was it explained? And from that, if we'd been there at the time and we'd been Cree or Ojibwe, how would we have understood it? How was it explained? And how would I have understood it?
In 1995, the archives in Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, a student just doing research came across the diaries of the provincial commissioner at treaty-making time. George McMartin, the Ontario commissioner, kept very detailed diaries, and his were proving to be very, very useful to us. In his diary, it states exactly what our grandfathers, my grandfather, who signed the treaty, understood. We could use the land forever. It's a good thing. It's, there's nothing amiss or crooked about this thing. Will be taken care of. We're going to prosper in time. So all of that is recorded in the diary of the commissioner of the Ontario government at the time.
He was also not an employee of the Indian Affairs Department. He was a miner. He was in the mining profession. He said, Scott explained through the interpreter, because Scott couldn't speak Ojibwe or Cree, we have been sent by the king. The king wants his people to be happy and prosperous. As a sign of his goodwill, he will give you a present of $8 per person, every man, woman, and child, this year. And every year after this, $4 per person. There will be a feast. It won't be every year, it'll just be this year, because it's such an important event. You will choose a chief, and the chief will be given a flag. It will be a symbol of his authority. The way that this flag would be given, if I have a volunteer here, be unthinkable for a woman to be a chief, right? Certainly in the eyes of Duncan Campbell Scott and folks, right? You'd actually be cloaked in the flag. And you can see some of the pictures of this at treaty time. And so it was to protect you or to smother you, right? Which is it, right? But there was occasionally a mention about the law, never a mention about the Indian Act, never a mention about not being equal citizens, any of these things. Thank you for volunteering.
Sorry, I was the wrong gender.
No, I don't think you were. I think that was great. Thank you very much. So that's the way McMartin explains it. People said, we accept this agreement or treaty, whatever word they used in Cree, as you stated it. Somebody's offering you a gift. You don't say, no thanks, I don't want it.
These diaries are proving to be very, very, very useful in understanding what was said, what was understood, and also affirming what our elders understood and why they said the things they said. And the evidence that's in the places where they went. The very first place they went was Osnaburg, July 19th, 1905. Mishkigogama. That first treaty making. Misabe's name is a blind guy. He was well respected. He was the leader of his community. He wasn't made a chief until after that treaty. But people respected him because he knew the land, he knew his territories. He was a really good hunter, but he was blind. His son took him around, and he told his son where everything was, where the animals were, where to go. And they looked up to him. And he was scared, Misabe was. He was scared that if they signed the treaty, they would be compelled to live on that reserve that was given to them as part of that formula. And they would be deprived of their hunting and fishing.
Second issue in this area of our land is called a reserve. We need to know that you really expect us all to live on that land. We cannot continue to survive that way. We cannot be free that way. We cannot be Anishinaabe that way.
And he was told by the commissioners, don't worry, Misabe, don't worry.
Chief, you have nothing to fear. The way that you make your living now will in no way be interfered with. You can continue to live the way that you and your ancestors have always lived. This promise will last as long as the sun shines and the river flows.
With that reassurance, Misabe was satisfied, and the first signing of Treaty Number 9 took place.
They didn't leave the document with us. They didn't translate the document. They said words to get our signature. Dr. John Long, one of the questions he asked right in the beginning of his book is Treaty 9, was it a trick or a treaty? And in my opinion, it was a trick, because the government of the day knew that if they didn't go back to Ottawa with the signatures of the cris or the marks of the cris, they were going to get fired, they're going to be sent home, that they failed their job. So they had to do everything in their power to be able to say things and sound good to our people so they could get their marks, they could get their signature, and they could go back to their offices and their bosses in Ottawa and said, we got the treaty.
We also have an article that Duncan Campbell Scott wrote and published, because that was his real passion, was writing. He's basically said, what could they understand about the reason why we were there? Nothing. They couldn't possibly understand why we're there and all this constitutional stuff. So he says the simple facts had to be stated, and the parental idea developed that the king is the great father of the Indians, watchful over their interests and ever compassionate. we're doing what's best for you, right? And they talk in the written version of the treaty about the chiefs and head men who had been chosen to represent the others, when in fact we know from the culture that normally somebody doesn't have the right to make a decision on your behalf unless you talk about it and you reach consensus, and then that person can speak for you because he's speaking the consensus.
Where I come from, they talk about in the summertime, that's the time when you go travel and you visit your family. So people were moving around because the pressure wasn't on, right, to have meat for the winter and all this. There was time for social gatherings, I guess.
Absolutely. At Fort Albany, probably half the people were absent because they weren't going to go around from trapping ground to get people's signature. They were doing whatever was the easiest way to get the signatures and to say that they met with everyone.
I'm just getting mad.
Does that mean that by taking the treaty money, the people of the Mushkegowuk area saying that by virtue of taking this money, I agree to this treaty?
When Scott, Stewart, and McMartin are coming along the Albany River, not everybody was at the posts. They met people halfway in between who didn't get there yet or who weren't planning to go there. And they write in their journal that it was always explained that by taking the money, you take the treaty. How would they ever explain that when it doesn't seem like the treaty was explained when they had 2 hours to talk about it? So one of the arguments might be by taking the money, you surrendered your Indian title, right? That's why you got this money. Even though McMartin seems to say the king is just generous and he wants you to prosper and be happy. As far as the rights to hunt and trap and fish, it doesn't look like government regulation was mentioned, and it doesn't look like lands taken up were mentioned. So even if taking that money is a problem legally, it doesn't take away the issue of hunting, trapping, and fishing. It's not clear-cut, in other words. It says that there will be a copy of the treaty provided. We have no evidence that they were distributed in 1905. They weren't even printed until 1906. And even then, we have some evidence that people didn't find out what the treaty actually said until maybe 25 years later. When we interviewed these elders in 1987, there was one man at Saskatchewan, and he said, "My dad was a young man when the treaty was signed. And 25 years after, the Anglican minister invited him over for tea. And he asked him, 'What does the treaty say?' And he said, 'My father told him what he had heard.' And the Anglican minister said to him, 'No, this is what the treaty says.' And 25 years later, it seems, was the first time people heard that what was written down is different from what they had heard.
Martin Falls, same thing. William Whitehead, he says, "That's not enough land you're giving me," he says. "We want to hunt all the way down that river. It's not enough, this reserve you're giving us," he says. He's questioning the commissioners about that formula. This is not good. It's too small. Then they told him, "Mr. Whitehead, you can hunt and fish as of old, and you're not restricted to territory. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." They gladly accepted the situation. That's what it says in McMartin's diary. He doesn't even say anything about the taken up clause in the diary. Why? Why? Because the commissioners never said anything about the taken up clause. Never mentioned it at all. Never said anything about the taken up clause. Because if they had told my grandfather, "Look, Andrew, you can hunt, fish, and trap. You can live on this reserve, but if I want to build a mine and do some forestry, sorry, you can't do that anymore, sorry." You think my grandfather would have said, "Sounds good, where do I put my mark?" No, it wasn't even talked about. No taken up clause in the diary of the commissioners.
I don't know why that people think our, like the government, I don't know why they think we're stupid, okay? Like Stan said, he put it this way, if they told my grandfather that they were surrendering the land, he would have pushed the boat back out. I say, go back to where you came from. No way. You know, our people weren't stupid. You were intelligent. It just baffles me what the government of the day was thinking.
So can you answer your question about the treaty?
Yep.
What is your answer?
Well, I had asked if it was fulfilled, and obviously it's not. A treaty is to us is to live in peace and prosper together in peace. And obviously we're the low end of that prospering of Canada as a whole. Yeah.
Extrait du journal de Joseph Fanas, constable de la police du Canada.
B. James, juillet 1905. En approchant, on entendait nettement le battement des tambours au loin. Les Indiens nous avaient vus arriver, car ils se tenaient sur le sommet de la colline, bordant la rive. Afin de les impressionner encore plus, j'empoignai l'Union Jack qui battait au vent à l'extrémité de notre canot, et je gravis la colline à la suite des commissaires. À notre demande, l'un des jeunes braves partit chercher le vieux conjurateur qui sortit de sa hutte. Puis, nous alignâmes tous les membres de la bande en demi-cercle devant nous, et les commissaires les chapitrèrent en leur disant que le roi, leur bon père, serait scandalisé s'ils avaient vent de leur conduite. Au lieu de célébrer cette fête illégale, ils auraient dû tous se trouver au fort de la compagnie de la baie d'Hudson. Mais notre mission était une mission de paix, et s'ils promettaient solennellement de mettre fin à cette pratique répréhensible, ils ne seraient pas molestés. L'après-midi du 6 fut consacré à visiter la réserve du lac Seul dans le but de dissuader les Indiens de prendre part aux danses et aux cérémonies de guérison organisées sur la réserve.
That's how it is, folks. That's what we're learning. And it's exciting. I'm excited because this is good stuff. And it's what we've been saying all along. Finally, we're getting evidence. Finally, we're getting support in terms of how the treaty was really presented, how the treaty was really understood by our forefathers. That's good stuff. Because now we know our elders all along that have been saying we never gave up our land. How true that is. How right on they are about that. People like Emil Nakuji, Willie Stevens, Goshi Wynne, Monroe Linklater, Thomas Archibald, all these elders that we know, Andrew Wesley, that said that all these years. And now Chief Norm is saying that. Grand Chief Yesno is saying that. I'm saying that. Our chiefs are saying that. We're right. We were right all along. And Duncan Campbell Scott, he's standing in front of the government of the day and speaking on the creation of a bill to implement the Indian residential school system in Canada, 1920. And he said,
Je veux liquider le problème indien. Je ne suis pas d'avis que le pays devrait continuer à protéger une classe d'individus qui peuvent se tenir debout seuls. Notre objectif est de poursuivre nos efforts jusqu'à ce qu'il ne reste plus un seul Indien au Canada qui n'ait été absorbé dans la société et qu'il n'ait plus de questions indiennes ni de ministère des Affaires indiennes.
And he's the same guy who sat down with my grandfather to talk about the treaty. And the sad part is, 2013, is there Duncan Campbell Scots who think that way in Toronto, Kingston, Ottawa, Montreal, Ottawa? You're darn right there is. There's people, unfortunately, that still have that mindset. And that's why we got to continue talking about the treaty. That's why we got to continue talking about the good things that came out of it and our understandings from our elders in regard to the treaty. That's why we need to educate not only ourselves, we got to educate the general Canadian public about the treaty. Because the treaty is not something that you should be scared of. The treaty is it's something that we should all benefit from, and it's a good thing. We're all treaty people. Non-Native people are treaty people too. because your governor represented you, and you need to learn about what was said and what was done and what was done wrong and what was done right. So I think we got a lot of work to do.
Le 24 janvier 2013, la chef de Ruse Spence accepte de mettre un terme à sa grève de la faim de 6 semaines, à la condition que l'Assemblée des Premières Nations présente au gouvernement une déclaration dans laquelle il s'engage à respecter 13 demandes visant l'amélioration des conditions de vie des Premières Nations, ainsi que la reconnaissance des traités régissant les relations avec le gouvernement.
Always remember that we're here together and we're here for our people, especially the youth. You know, the youth look up on our leaders, so it's really important to remember they're watching leaders. You know, it is their future, and we have to protect their treaty rights and their relationship. Again, I just want to say thank you to all the chiefs and to the grandmothers and the women, even the children that came to Victoria Island, giving us encouragement words.
La chef Spence se bat pour les droits de tous les peuples autochtones. Les enfants et les jeunes savent qu'ils occupent une place spéciale dans son cœur. Les marcheurs Nishu ont parcouru la très longue distance de 1600 km entre Wapmagosti, sur les rives de la baie James au Québec, et la colline du Parlement à Ottawa. Dans bien des années encore, les gens raconteront leur histoire. Ils diront: il y a de cela fort longtemps, 6 jeunes hommes et leur guide sont venus à pied de très loin pendant l'époque la plus froide de l'année. Ils apportaient un message de renouveau, un monde où les familles sont unies, où règne l'amour et le respect, et où personne ne connaît la peur.
It all started from the vision of a young man. He was 17 at the time. He celebrated his birthday on the journey, and this young man said he was going to walk. He didn't invite anybody. He said, "I'm going to walk to Ottawa." So when the other young men heard that, he said, "We're going to go with you." But there's 6 of them that left Wapmagosti. Yeah, that's the last Cree community in northern Quebec.
I was really tired of what was going on, the government pushing us aside. It really showed how they didn't want to talk to us face to face. I saw that during Teresa Spence's hunger strike. If they really wanted to do business with natives, they would have answered right away, but they didn't. They continued to let Teresa Spence suffer. So I wanted to show my support to what was going on. And I wanted to go with something grassroots from the Cree people. And I remembered stories of our ancestors went on journeys that lasted for months to trade with fellow First Nations across Canada. They walked with snowshoes because that was the best time to travel, because the lakes and rivers are frozen, so you can just walk over. So it's pretty much how the idea came to me, the journey.
They got a really, really good reception in every community that we passed. The people were so touched by the words that they used to describe what it is that they want to show the world and their message.
And it's been hard along the trail, but nobody gave up. In fact, they grew in numbers at every community. So instead of people like dropping out, people joined. And now today you're going to see hundreds of, over a couple hundred youth walking, from this place into Ottawa.
We want to get a big group picture, okay? Everybody move to the teepee.
really good. I feel really good walking that far. It's helped me a lot personally too. And I'm really happy that I joined. It's life-changing, that's for sure. And it's going to be something I'm always going to tell my grandkids and my children, and I want them to tell the story too.
How old are you?
I'm 16.
16, and you're already talking about your grandchildren?
Yeah.
Seeing the people that joined us, seeing their faces, they're smiling. They really looked up to us because of what we did. We were hoping that a lot of nations would come by to show their support, and they did. The Algonquins, the Mohawks, the Mi'kmaqs, our neighbors, the Inuits, all the other nations across the West, they showed their full support to what we were doing. And we became really close afterwards, like brothers, really, all of us. We became like a family in the journey. And that was beginning to feel like I was wanted. I was loved.
And this journey has rekindled the spirit of our people. We had a value system of respect, of honor, you know, not only among ourselves, but also to honor and respect the land. We connected with the land through starting to understand more of the legends, more of the stories. For us, the storytelling is our Bible. Love, respect, honor, that's how our value system was structured.
We need to remember our ceremonies, our traditional ways of governance. Things need to change. There's definitely something wrong. You know, there's definitely something wrong when our women are being murdered and go missing and no one cares. There's something wrong when suicide rates are higher than third world countries. We need to go back to those traditional ways because I truly feel that's the only way we'll be able to heal.
You know, a lot of people are waking up, especially youth. You know, it's what we're doing, and not just us, but the previous walkers in the shoe and walkers before them and the ones behind us. You know, it's all a collaboration of unity. We're going to secure our futures, not just for this generation, but for generations to come.
Walking is medicine. You get to feel the land. And that's how our ancestors are speaking through us, is through the land. I feel myself now very close to my ancestors. You know, we're doing a lot of the same things that they have always fought for. I feel it inside me sometimes when I'm speaking, like somebody's beside me, even makes me proud of who I am. I'm proud to be here as a grandchild of Chief Jinghua Gomes. And as we keep walking through the land, our ancestors will rise through us and we will be together once again.
matters. You can't stand here.
Brothers and sisters,
why is it that we have a young eagle soaring above? Prayers are being answered.
this young man had the vision. His name is David Kawapit from Wapmakstu.
Wadzjak, Tähendab, ma ütlen, sa oled ka tiste, mis sa täted, ka ei pomtam kaob ja hoidsi, mis sa ka pomtasod. Ta paneb titadannat võo käge otstat, võo õitsio tõjega. Võo pääsksätaga sai käis sok otstat tõje ja pomtat. Ta hästi seda, ta tõmb sõja nagats. Seda on mi aitangi ja seda on mi aitan. Ta tistajat, sest ta vastu ma käin tistajat, naskas semmoista johit, sekä totekin no. Aga ma gnista, ma poon tännat. Aga ta on skont no, adje. That day on Parliament, that's when I got to see my father. I was pretty much overwhelmed that day.
Greetings to all.
My family here. Nästan on maitana apin kautta. The reason I left is because of the youth that are struggling with their life. And so many committed suicide. And there was no one there to help them when they were in need. Like 5 years ago, and I was going to school here in Ottawa. I wanted to take my life, and I don't want that for anyone.
the youth that they can accomplish anything, no matter what. I started walking from Ashwagonish, James Bay, and I made it all the way to Ottawa. So don't be afraid to talk to someone. There's people that can help you. Don't hide your emotions. Let it out.
I want to express from my heart a depth of gratitude for all you walkers. You've etched your names in the history of this country today. You're so often told they're the leaders of tomorrow. I'm here to say they're the leaders of right now. They are the leaders of right now. I also want to acknowledge the members of Parliament who are here. The young people are reaching out to this house behind us. They're reaching out to all Canadians. We are stronger together. To the walkers from the journey of 2013, Teco, Teco, thank you so much.
Our next speaker needs no introduction. When she walks on the stage, you will recognize her. Chief Teresa Spence.
Tamani nas kama go hushkat sigagi bicho mortechek kino kastag unas kuzichek kino kastag isage hedechek kino kastag inaga hedechek kino kastag mona how imponistachek gani not how inotistachek and he taught us even in leadership that we have to do things together, not to be afraid, to move forward. And it's important for the leaders to hear and listen to youth because it is their future. And we have to do it together. And there's one important message that we receive from this journey is to love each other and take care of each other. That was the purpose of this treaty, is to work together. They show us that. We did that together. They walked together with hands in hands. When they met a lot of challenges during that journey, they didn't walk away from each other. They stayed together. They take care of each other. And this is what we need to do with this parliament, government. We have to walk together. It's time to walk together. A treaty is going to be there. It's never going to go away. So we have to honor that and protect that treaty. But we can't do it alone. We need our partners. You're leading us to be together and to work with the government. You're going to lead us that journey. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Chimingash.
Change doesn't just come overnight, it takes time, and we're just kick-starting something larger than our journey. And slowly getting there. Change is gonna come soon.
Treaties are a very sacred thing. That's why, we're still here. That resilience, that belief, that hope, that thing that someday we will have what we want. Because to me, I look around and it's still very much alive. We're still trying to get people to understand what those agreements, what those promises mean. But it hasn't changed who we are inside. That's the important piece. That to me is the hope.
Crazy horse, we hear what you say. One earth, one mother. One does not sell the earth, the people walk upon. We are the land. How do we sell our mother? How do we sell the stars? How do we sell the air? Crazy horse, we hear what you say. Too many people standing their ground, standing the wrong ground. Predator's face, he possessed a race. Possession, a war that doesn't end. Children of God feed on children of earth. Days people don't care for people. These days are the hardest. Material fields, material harvest. Decoration on chain that binds. Mirrors gold. The people lose their minds. Crazy horse, we hear what you say. One earth, one mother. One does not sell the earth, the people walk upon. We are the land. breeze now and then. Dream smokes touch the clouds. On a day when death didn't die, real world time, tricks, shadows lie. Red, white, perception, deception. Predator tries civilizing us, but the tribes will not go without return. Genetic light from the other side, a song from the heart, our hearts to give. The wild days, the glory days live. Crazy horse, we hear what you say. One earth, one mother. One does not sell the earth the people walk upon. We are the land. How do we sell our mother? How do we sell the stars? How do we sell the air? Crazy horse, we hear what you say. Crazy horse, we hear what you say. We are the seventh generation. We are the seventh generation.
Le tambour nous appelle toujours.